Hey, what's up, guys? It's Adam from Rescue Michigan, and tonight we've got a very special guest, Chris Anders from Virginia, from the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership, is in studio with us. We're going to bring him on in just a moment. But first, I've got some semi-painful housekeeping announcements to make. Obviously, if you have gone to our YouTube channel, you discovered we were in the wrong place, and this is unfortunately the growing pains of going live. That we're using this new platform now called StreamYard for doing our live streams, and what apparently has happened was that the video that I created on YouTube, StreamYard can't just automatically connect to. I had to make a new one. So if you were there, you saw a 30-second video of me saying, hey, click on our channel link, and then you will see the actual live video that's now on our YouTube page. Hopefully that hasn't completely screwed everything up for everybody. And maybe you're on our Rumble page where we are actually live with the original destination. So you're there. So at any rate, if you want to participate and you want to be involved in this live stream, we should be live on YouTube now and live on Rumble, and we will be monitoring both live chats. So we'll look for your questions and comments, and be happy to answer them. But anyway, let me bring on our guest. This is Chris Anders. He is from the Foundation. Well, Chris, why don't I let you introduce yourself?
Okay, well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Chris Anders. I'm the director of the Virginia Constitutional Conservatives. I am also an instructor for the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership. I've been in grassroots politics for 15 years, leading fights with the Campaign for Liberty, National Association for Gun Rights, National Pro-Life Alliance, Students for Life, Young Americans for Liberty, anything and everything for liberty. So I've been very, very busy.
Yeah, you and I have run in similar circles. I was with Campaign for Liberty from about that time. But in the interim between the 2008 and 2012 Ron Paul campaigns, I was like running their website, doing some copy editing for their state emails. I've probably, deployed some emails to your state. And you were, I think, in West Virginia at the time.
At the time, West Virginia. Yep.
But I wanted to have you on the show tonight because the big story, at least in politics this past week, was the huge upset in Virginia that the Republican won the governor race, the lieutenant governor race, the attorney general race. You guys took back the state. You guys call it the House of Delegates out there. But same thing as our state house. And one thing I remember from working in campaigns is the media never gives you the real story about what's going on. Even the so-called conservative media, and even if they were actually trying, they wouldn't have the details. Like if you're not on the ground, involved in the mechanics of the campaign, you don't really know what's going on. And we're trying in Michigan to replicate the victory that you guys just had in Virginia. So I wanted to bring you on the show tonight and kind of talk about what really went down in Virginia, what you guys were doing, and all those important details, because we are training grassroots leaders all across Michigan, and we want to learn from you because what you did obviously was supremely effective in Virginia, and I think maybe even more so than our members know, because again, all they've heard is the top line messaging. Republicans won, but I think there's probably even more to it than that. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, there was a lot more to it than that, and it was a 2-year program on our part to restore Virginia. So, and we're not there yet. I mean, we're still looking. It was a great victory. We've got the House, which is what I care about, because the legislative branch is the most powerful branch of government. But now we're already eyeing, because of redistricting, we're having elections in 22 and 23 for the House of Delegates, and in 23 for the state Senate. And there's some state Senate senators that really have it coming. So now we're starting to tighten down our scope on them as well. So it was a long, hard fight, definitely using the tactics that we teach at the foundation, and really narrowing our focus to the state house.
Very good. Well, by the way, if I could ask, because I hear a little bit of feedback coming through, and it's probably because you're not using headphones, if you can just turn down enough so that you can hear me, but not too comfortably, then that'll reduce the feedback a little bit. That will be helpful. And also, in the meantime, because we've got people coming in, and obviously because of my own screw up, we have had to shift YouTube videos, and so the link that we sent out to everybody is no longer a working link. So I just want to take a few minutes and talk a little bit about the news of the day. And you've been moving, right? You probably haven't as much access to the media as you might ordinarily, just because of all the stuff that you've got going on right now.
Oh, it's crazy. That and the fact that we're getting ready for the legislative session because we want to be the first state to repeal red flag gun confiscation. So we've already written the bill. We've got a bill champion, and we're already getting press releases out. So that there is no rest.
Yeah, not even on the holiday season, and that's tough, man. That's tough. Like, this is the time of year when nobody wants to engage, when they want to take a break, but politics runs on deadlines, and
yes,
if you're not ready when the time comes, then you're screwed. But anyway, so I want to give I want to give our viewers a few more minutes to come in here, and in the meantime, I gotta talk at least a little bit about the big story today, because what an absolute bombshell it's been. I have not had this problem of having to move, so I have been absolutely glued to my computer watching the live coverage of the Kyle Rittenhouse case in Kenosha. And I know you know this, but for the benefit of our viewers who have been watching, this is the kid who went to Kenosha after the Jacob Blake shooting, when police shot a man who was kidnapping his children and reaching for a knife in his car when police shot him. And that led to awful riots in Kenosha, rioters burning down the city. And this one 17-year-old boy, Kyle Rittenhouse, showed up to try to help out the situation, tried to put out fires, tried to administer medical aid to people, tried to protect property, and also defended his own life with an AR-15, which ended up leading to the shooting deaths of one pedophile and one, was he a family beater? I think he was. I think he was convicted of beating his immediate family members. Yeah. One of whom had run at him after threatening to kill him. The next that was beating him on the head with a skateboard. And then he also shot a third gentleman in the arm who had a gun pointed at his head. And today was an incredible, I mean, the whole trial's been absolutely amazing and so bizarre. And we could talk about that all night. But what happened today was, to the surprise of every lawyer that was watching this trial, Kyle took the stand. And yet was, number one, he was amazingly good. Like, for any 18-year-old to answer the questions with as much composure as this guy did under hour after hour after hour of cross-examination was just incredible. And then at the same time, the prosecutor was absolutely excoriated by the judge over and over again. First, he tried to attack Kyle for exercising his right to remain silent. And then, like, literally 5 minutes after that happened, he excoriates him again because the guy tries to bring in excluded evidence, saying that Kyle 2 months earlier made some joke about something, and they were trying to use that to attack his character. And the judge just absolutely, the judge is like super based, and he's a really old judge. He's been really polite and kind and considerate and polite to everybody. He screamed at that prosecutor, screamed at him. And he even said, if this happens one more time, I'm going to put in a mistrial for a mistrial with prejudice. And after about, and then what happened, like maybe like a half hour later, the same prosecutor says, I want to introduce this new evidence that the defense has had no time to see, and it's this new footage that we're going to zoom and enhance on. Mm-hmm. And the defense, which has been, Kyle's defense has been absolutely awful in a lot of ways. Worst of it being, well, probably the worst of it was jury selection, but they've also been really, really bad about objecting. And they finally objected and said, wait a minute, we haven't even seen this yet. And you're saying you're going to zoom and enhance on this? What are you talking about enhancing? You're talking about changing the underlying nature of this video you're going to present as evidence? And the prosecutor just baldly lies to the judge and says, no, it's like a magnifying glass. We're not going to change anything. And the judge is like, all right, you got 20 minutes to bring in an expert to tell me that zooming in on this with enhancements is not going to change the underlying video. And you knew the prosecutor got his expert to say, hey, buddy, don't go down this road, because it absolutely does change the video and you're going to get thrown out of that courtroom. And they withdrew it, but they came within minuscule amounts of time and space from having the judge just absolutely throw the case out. It's been absolutely bizarre to watch. And I hope you guys all do. But whatever is going to happen in this case, I mean, this is such a fundamental, this is the Second Amendment on trial. This is the right to self-defense on trial. And Chris, you mentioned you've worked for the National Association of for gun rights. So, you know, like, everybody's watching this case right now.
Well, absolutely. It's just like the right to life, liberty, and property also entails the means to defend your life, your liberty, and your property. And
Yep.
all of that's on trial with this case. It seems to me, just a quick viewing that I've been able to do here and there is that the prosecution's trying to hit, a home run or a Hail Mary, as it may be, because they know it's not working out well for them. And they're, because prosecutors are always looking to, move up the ladder. They're probably trying to make a name for themselves, stuff like that, like your typical politicians.
Yeah.
So,
This guy's name, we call him Little Binger. Because his last name is Binger, and he looks, I don't know if you're familiar with the show Game of Thrones, but there's this character who's this snide, conniving, manipulative liar named Littlefinger, and he looks just like him. So Little Binger is his name. That's what the internet has called him, and it's absolutely perfect. And in fact, today, it's starting to trend disbar Binger on Twitter, because he's clearly, intentionally bringing in evidence he knows is false. And it happened multiple times today. Yesterday, it happened again. He had a witness that I think it was a witness the defense called? It was a witness the defense called, actually. Although their prosecutors' witnesses did them no favors either. But this guy, I think he worked for the Daily Caller, testifies that the prosecutor told him to lie and told him to change his story. So it's not going well for them at all. It's not.
Bless his heart. Yeah. Bless his heart.
Yeah, that's an ongoing inside joke at FACL, and I'm sure because you're from Virginia. Yeah, bless your heart, Southern speak for what an idiot, and that's something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So anyway, all right. Well, we've had enough spicy bants about the Rittenhouse case. It's looking really good. I hope it continues. The only thing that I think is not necessarily going well, and we just don't know, is who the jurors are. And I guess we'll see. They might not. The judge might not even give the jury the chance to choose to find him innocent or guilty. But we'll see. We just don't know. But it's been absolutely amazing court TV like I've never seen. In fact, I think Andrew Branca, the guy that wrote The Law of Self-Defense, he said, I've never seen a judge tear up a prosecutor the way this judge tore up Little Binger today. So it's been amazing.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting the fallout or whatever happens afterwards. That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, the media narrative around this case has been as horrible as you expect from the media. But I think even and Tucker was talking about how even this one woman who is a reporter for the Young Turks, which is this commie punk YouTube show, even she was like, "Yeah, we got the reporting wrong," and she admitted to it, and that's impressive.
Wow.
But anyway, so let's talk about Virginia, because the big story is you guys have absolutely crushed it.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone in Michigan, we watch this stuff, but we don't really know what's actually happened. And I want to hear the story from you. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, what campaigns you're involved with. And just start from the top, man.
Okay.
I don't really have any exhibits, so let's just tell your story and we'll go from there.
Okay, I'll just start from the bottom and work my way up. How's that?
Perfect.
No, our group uses strictly the tactics that the foundation teaches. We believe in the confrontational model of politics. And it was in 2019, we saw it coming. We knew what was going to happen with the radical leftists taking over the state house, and we had an idea of what they were going to do. So what we did immediately following that election, we had like one of those emergency meetings where you pull your whole team together. And by the way, our team not only has gone to the 1 day, but the 3 day, and now most of us are going down to Florida this month for the National Professional 4 day school. So they're highly trained and highly effective, and I couldn't get anything done.
Let me stop you there just so we explain this for our viewers, because they don't know what we're talking about necessarily. Mm-hmm. But a lot of them probably do know about the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership, because you guys have had a lot of schools in Michigan this year. Mm-hmm. And these are your 1 day grassroots leadership schools where you go over the principles of organizing, you go over the principles of confrontation, you go over basic top level legislative strategy. And then you guys sometimes have 2 day and 3 day schools, which is like for higher level people that are moving up. And then there's the big event in Florida, which unfortunately I cannot attend this year. I wanted to, but I don't think I can make it work with Thanksgiving plans and everything. But it's like the top of the top political leadership schools that you guys do for the most effective organizers. And so what you're talking about is a particular, let's say, intellectual tradition of effective activism, from which I am all too proud to have gone through as well, which is that you don't play nice with politicians. You tell them what they got to do. You mobilize the pressure as much as it takes to get what you do to get your agenda through. And sometimes that means going really hard on them, and that means pissing off a lot of their friends. That means being called, unreasonable. Strangely enough, in Michigan, suddenly people are calling us rhinos and claiming that we're the ones who are. You couldn't make this stuff up, but.
It's funny. I mean, you often say if you want to have a friend in politics, if you're going to be effective, just go ahead and get a dog and forget about it. You're not going to be liked if you're actually effective in politics, because we believe unless you're politically feared, you'll never be respected. Right. So we absolutely believe in hardball politics. We don't play nice with politicians. We realized that what happened in 2019, we got together real quick with the team. We looked over everything. We identified specific districts, 10 specific districts out of 100 in Virginia that we were going to focus on over the next 2 years. Right. And then, following that, we followed of course, all the training that we teach, and that is, build your list, right? We built lists in targeted districts. We had trainings. We had over 30 trainings, maybe 40 in the past 2 years in Virginia. We've trained 1,000 activists so far in Virginia. We have quite an army, but we did those in those targeted districts because politicians are like deer. You hunt them where they live. Okay. So we wanted to, I'm a big deer hunter. So, but you hunt them where they live. So we built teams within those districts. Then we identified the issues. We use the tools that we teach, and the two big ones, on top of, it's nice to win elections, but what really matters is policy, right? What really matters is the policies that pass. And in the past 2 years, we stopped with a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic, whack job governor. We stopped an AR ban. We stopped the magazine capacity ban. And just this year, we stopped the homemade gun ban. They call them ghost guns. And that's normally low-hanging fruit for the anti-gun nuts, but we stopped them there. And at 15 minutes to go in the session, we stopped the bill. That was a nail biter. But and people told me I couldn't do it. And I said, watch me, we're going to stop it. But, so by building in those different districts and kind of laying down the barrage to begin with, because the people that we targeted in the legislative fights were the same ones we were targeting come election. Right. So we made a huge army within their home districts of very angry, engaged, and trained activists. Right. I mean, that's a perfect firestorm. It's a perfect firestorm. And by doing so, then it actually made the election a heck of a lot easier, right? It wasn't, everybody looks at it and they're stunned. And yet we saw it coming 8 months ago. We're like, okay, yeah, they've really stepped in it. And we've got the teams in place now. We can take them out, right? Because the interesting thing about it is when, this new crop of gun grabbing Socialist Democrats came in, is they were sort of on a suicide pact. They wanted to get their policies passed, and they were willing to pay for it with an election loss. Okay. Which is the difference between Democrats and, unfortunately, Republicans, is because when Democrats get elected, they do things. When Republicans get elected, sadly, they just try to hold on to power. And that's something we're changing this time, because right after this election, we're already rolling out. We want to be the first state to repeal, red flag gun confiscation, which violates nearly half the Bill of Rights. And we've got a bill champion who just got elected, and we worked that district, right? And she's moving, her name's Marie March, and she's moving forward with the legislation, and we're going all in. And, it's funny, you talk about all the national news and everything that's going on. When you're really working state level politics, you're so focused. But going back to the election, it was a long, hard fight. I had a great team. Wally Bunye was my candidate coordinator. We created our candidate survey. You can find that if you go to virginiaconservatives.net and click on the 2021 Restore Virginia Now candidate survey. If you just go up there you go. There's a survey, and you just scroll down. There's a picture of Bunker Hill. Imagine that. I'm a big history buff. But if you scroll on down, it has the questions we have.
You guys have much better history than Michigan does.
Do what?
You guys have much better history than Michigan does.
Well, Michigan, there's a lot of 1812
I
history.
mean, it's nice, but it's not like America's Revolution. We don't have that.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, what was one of our rallying cries is Virginia is where we secured our independence and freedom and liberty in 1783 in Yorktown, right?
Yep.
Most of our first presidents, those who wrote the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, I mean, they all came from Virginia. So why are we letting the statists, the authoritarians, and the whack job socialists take our state? We're going to restore it and make it what it should be, and for future generations. I mean, that's our end goal, But we went in, we created the survey, sent the survey out to all the candidates. Doesn't matter, which political party. And if you scroll on the bottom, you see the results, which party they were a member of. We sent it to everybody. And so we had our targeted districts, and then we compared that to who filled out the survey. And you can tell if you look through there, the red is they refused to fill it out. The green, light green, is they agreed to support us on that issue. Red means they absolutely would oppose us on that issue. And dark green means they're going to sponsor the bill. Now, bless their hearts, the Republican leadership in Virginia told Republican candidates, please don't fill out their survey.
Our leadership says that too. We've heard it from them as well.
Yeah, because of all crazy things, we're going to hold them accountable to that, to what they did. And just wait, the 2022 legislative session's coming, and I'm going to Richmond for 3 months. So, but so we sent the survey. We were able to narrow down. We have good people running in this district. We have so-so people running that district. And oh, by the way, we just have these absolute gun crazy nuts who have it coming.
I love how you have the breakdown in this column on the right here with the new delegates that won with huge amounts of the vote. And then for those who are like with you, but they were running in Democrat seats, you make the note, this guy didn't spend any money in his race. This was a traditionally Democrat district, stuff like that. So you're pointing out to people. The ones that we got that ran on our issue and supported it won with huge amounts of the votes where it was even possible to win. That's great, man. I love it.
Yeah, well, it's Wally Bunye put all that together. He's a retired lieutenant colonel. He was a battalion tank commander in the Gulf War, and I often joke that he's killed more people than smallpox. But he ran our survey program for us, and he did a wonderful job. Because being in politics for 15 years, I don't exactly get along necessarily with all politicians or candidates. They kind of rub me the wrong way, you might want to say. But Wally did a great job putting that together. Our team was amazing. It really was. I mean, we had some teams deployed at 1 o'clock in the morning on election day. I remember driving around getting signs out. We were hammering down, and what we found became the real core issue. I'm sure you've been watching the news about Loudoun County, right? There's something going on with the school board, maybe. I was at a couple of those meetings, okay, including the one where everybody got thrown out or arrested or whatever the case may be. We found that back in 2020, the Democrats had voted for House Bill 257. What that did was enable the principals of the schools to hide sexual assault. Okay.
Wow.
And they were able to hide it. And the big blow up at the school board meeting that everybody saw was shut down. It was on national news. Tucker had and a few others was because the father of a girl who had been sodomized twice, not once, twice, was there to speak, and they wouldn't let him speak. And a big brawl broke out, right? But nobody knew about this because the school covered it up. And suddenly they've covered up. I mean, all of this is coming to light, the number of sexual assault cases that we've had in schools. And suddenly that became the issue the last, 45 days of the election. Like, these people, are hiding, physical sexual assault in schools. And so we really doubled and tripled and quadrupled down. I think all in all, when we talk about building our list, we started from about 10,000 people on our email list. We're up to 384,000 on our list now. I think in 2 years, we sent out 4.3 million automated calls, not to count like almost 1 million automated texts.
And is that this group, VirginiaConservatives.net? That's the one?
Yeah, that's our website. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I mean, we've done so much to build the list around the proper fights, to build the teams in the right areas, to soften up, I guess you would say, the beachhead We bombarded the beachhead, kind of paved the road in a lot of these districts. So it's, you know, and the other thing that we're not shy about is we fundraise a lot. We fundraise a ton because if you believe in what you're doing, you're going to ask for money to do it, right? Because money in politics is ammunition. You run out of ammunition, guess what happens to you? You lose the battle. So, but no, I mean, it was a great fight. You know, I could go in detail on each district, but I mean, it was just a lot of hard work and was dedication over 2 years. You know,
and it sounds like you had some role in crafting that narrative that ultimately, I think, really crashed into what ended up being a huge narrative, which is what's going on in the schools. You know, we've got a guy, I've been meaning to get him on our show, but he was a political consultant. He was a volunteer, or maybe he was a campaign manager for this guy that was running for state rep. And this was, I think, maybe like 15 years ago, something like that. And he was running in a blue seat, hadn't been Republican in 50 plus years. And what ended up happening, they were campaigning on the usual Republican issues, taxes, the business tax was a big issue that year. And what ended up happening was there was an NAACP conference in Detroit, and all 3 Democrat candidates for governor pledged their support for reparations for slavery. And the guy asked his boss, "Hey, you mind if I try out this issue? Let me see how it plays in the district." And he starts knocking on doors. And instead of talking about taxes, he starts talking about, "Hey, do you think it should be a good thing for the for you to be required to pay money to people for slavery that you had nothing to do with?" And he said, I put out 30 yard signs that day. So he learned from testing that this was a winning issue. The campaign ended up putting out a mailing about slavery reparations, ended up winning, became the first Republican to win that seat in 50 years. And the guy served with distinction for the full term up to what Michigan's term limits are, 14 years in the legislature.
But it's like the 75th district where Rosalind Tyler was, she'd been in there for, I don't know, since I think I was in 6th grade. I'm not sure, but she'd been there for forever, and nobody ever beat her. And we decided to make that one of our really targeted districts. And every time an issue came up at the state, you know, legislature, we'd hit that district with phone calls, text, direct mail hits, right? Because they're not used to getting direct mail in the middle of a legislative session. They're used to a campaign. I mean, we sent out, I know, 50,000 pieces of direct mail just during the legislative sessions. So I mean, that's a lot of work. And again, I can't do it without my team. They're amazing, you know, coming up with the artwork and getting everything out. But we pounded that district really, really hard. And yeah, it flipped. And when you look at, I was part of the team that, you know, flipped West Virginia in 2012 and going into 2014, because it had been Democratic rule for 83 years. And suddenly we flipped it. And not only did we flip it with Republicans, we flipped it with Champions for Liberty. There's a distinct difference. Okay.
That's
I spend most of my days fighting for and against the Republican Party. So, you know, it's,
we do both. We have to, and we get heat from both sides. I get Republicans saying, "Oh, I wish you weren't so harsh on the Republicans," and then I also get grassroots people saying, "Man, you're a rhino, aren't you? Because you're not supporting our, you know, plan that doesn't have any path to victory." I'm like, "Look, guys, I'm just calling it like I see it, you know." But you get that. I think invariably, if you're being effective, you get it from both sides.
Well, you know what they say: truth is treason in the empire of lies, right?
I literally have that tattooed on my leg. I'm not even kidding. I'm not going to show it on stream because that would be totally improper.
Please don't. But you know, I mean, it really is. I mean, we just go out and tell the truth. We tell people, you know, what actually is going on, because most people don't pay attention to what's happening at the state level. And when you get them involved, because a lot of people just vote in the presidential election, they think, "Oh, our guy's in, I don't have to do anything," and they go to sleep. But the worst things often happen when a Republican's in the White House. Okay, you know, that's the truth. You know, if you look at what's happening at the state level,
it's easy to forget right now because it's been a while since we had. I mean, well, Trump, he had incredible victories, and he's absolutely not an establishment person. I mean, for all his failings, he was not an establishment guy. So you got to go back to George W. Bush to remember what it's like when a rhino is on the top of the ticket in the White House, and it's just the entire Republican political establishment making excuses for all of their indiscretions, which are pretty much the only thing they ever do.
Well, I mean, let's face it. W was probably the worst thing that happened to the conservative cause. I mean, everything from bailouts to what was that No Child Left Behind, which became Race to Top and Common Core, to the largest expansion of socialized medicine, Medicare, the Medicare expansion.
Part B,
Yep. I mean, in there we talk about the repeal of the Fourth Amendment with the Patriot Act. Okay, it's he demoralized conservatives. And we lost a lot, but I think we've gone a little bit off topic. But I'm glad to ride this out. But I mean, he really did. And so when you're looking at what's going to happen in Virginia, our biggest worry is that the top of the ticket, in the governor's office now won't actually do conservative things because nobody has a real feel on him. But we're going to test him and find out pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about the what do you think about the candidates for? Well, not the candidates now, the governor-elect, the lieutenant governor-elect, the attorney general-elect. Now, I find these are the toughest races. I mean, and just as an example, in Michigan, we've got a bevy of candidates running for governor. The one who's very clearly the establishment's pick doesn't seem to have a conservative bone in his body. The others are all not remotely financially competitive. Sorry to say, folks. Sorry to say. I know I'm hurting your feelings by saying that. You want to believe it. And as an old Ron Pauler, I know how painful and awful that is. But you do have to have a certain amount of money. And when the other side's outraise you 10 to 1, 20 to 1, 100 to 1, you're just not in the race. I mean, again, I hate it, but what do you do about that? And well, first of all, let me ask you, did you guys have any influence on who ultimately became the nominees for those races?
Okay, as far as the governor's race, Youngkin, he wouldn't fill out our survey. He wouldn't take a stand on hard issues. We really didn't touch that race at all because again, we were focusing on the House, which is more important. But when it came to the lieutenant governor, Winsome Sears filled out our survey, was a real champion. She's going to be a rock star, I think.
I think so too. She's already being a rock star. But, yeah. I mean, admittedly, you don't really know until they start choosing what they're going to do and what they're going to say when they're actually in office.
Right. Till they have to cast a tie-breaking vote on a very important piece of legislation. You don't know really, but we're going to put some pressure there. And if you're talking about the Attorney General elect, Jason Mayares, he actually in 2019 put in a red flag gun confiscation bill with two other Republicans, Tim Hugo and David Yancey. So we actually fought against him getting the nomination.
Oh boy.
He ended up Chuck Smith, who was more the conservative candidate, lost by about 1.5 points statewide and spent about, I want to say, 1/10 of the money. It was a close race. So unfortunately, I don't trust the attorney general at all. He's already talking about assuming powers over the counties. And some people in Virginia may call me a heretic for saying this, but I think he's going to be not great. How's that? I think he's going to cause more problems than he's going to fix. So as far as the governor, the jury's out on the governor. I don't know. We'll probably find out pretty soon. I think the lieutenant governor, Winsome Sears, is probably going to be really good. Again, till they're tested, you don't know. And Mayares is, let's just say he's not that principled. He ran. I swear to you, when you see a local gun group or a state gun group endorsing him, even though he put in a red flag gun confiscation bill.
Let me go out on a limb and guess what that gun right group might be. Was it the NRA?
No, it wasn't the NRA, even though they rated him high. But there's another one, and I don't spend my time beating up on other grassroots groups, but they're out there campaigning for him.
Oh boy.
Even in the primary, which means they just want to be friends with politicians.
Yeah, there's a lot of grassroots groups that have that problem. Either they want to be friends with the establishment, or they want to be friends with the politicians that don't even have a chance. And it's like, you guys got to pick your battles, right? I mean, you guys were focused on the state house and focused on carrying the serious constitutional conservatives over the line.
Right.
So I'm guessing you guys didn't spend a whole ton of money dropping mail for Glenn Youngkin.
I bet you we didn't spend a dime. How's that? But as far as, when it comes down to it, you've got to be targeted. You've got to be principled. And unfortunately, too many grassroots groups just want to be the lapdog of a politician because they want to have real nice Facebook profile photos. I want to get stuff done. I want policy. Okay. That's what I want. I have a 20-year-old daughter. She does not have the freedom and liberty that I had at 20. And she certainly doesn't have the same freedom and liberty that my grandfather had when he was fighting in the Pacific against the Japanese. Right. So she deserves that. And, it's my job. I don't think I'll take it all back. We didn't lose our liberty in one election or one decade, and we're not going to get it back in one election or one day, but I want to turn the head. I want to be able to help train and help lead others who will be better than I am and will be able to advance the cause when I decide I want to, get off this crazy train one day and just spend my days in the woods deer hunting, So, yeah. But it's a long, hard fight. A friend of mine, Sean Dow, says you never lose till you quit, right? The thing is, you get beat up sometimes, you rise back up and you fight again. And I think we're going to go stormy in the Richmond. We're actually going to rent a house for 3 months, and our different members of our staff are going to rotate through, and I'm going to be there a little while, you might say. And we're down there, and we're going to push policy. I mean, I want to be the first state to get rid of the red flag gun confiscation, which allows a SWAT team to kick in your door at 3 a.m. based on an anonymous tip, shoot your dog, threaten your family, and take your possession and your firearms without ever having your day in court. And, due process goes back to the Magna Carta in 1215. You have a right to face your accusers before your property is taken. I mean, and we've already had the vast majority of these cases in Virginia. There's about 40 now have occurred in what they call gun sanctuary counties. And the big effort on some gun groups was to have counties declare themselves gun sanctuary. But that didn't do any good when state police, showed up and kicked in the door, right? So
so much for that.
Yeah, so it's time to get something real done, and that's why we're going after red flag gun confiscation. And once we, nail that hide to the wall, we'll move on from there.
Yeah. Well, I hear Michigan is moving up the list of states where passing right to carry laws is going to be a priority, and I'm looking forward to that. We, right now are plagued with a Democrat governor, attorney general, secretary of state, but we're certainly hoping that gets turned around. And at least having a governor that would sign such a thing if it gets passed by the legislature. I don't know, might take 2/3. I'm not entirely convinced about the establishment picks for governors' true intentions on gun rights, although he says he's a huge supporter, but then we know
so Hillary Clinton
sometimes.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton said she'd support the Second Amendment. I mean, come on.
That's an easy one.
I approached one of our congressmen here in Virginia, and I told him I wanted to put in the Restore the Second Amendment Act. And he's like, what's that? I said, the repeal of the 1934, 1968, 1986 Federal Gun Control Acts. He goes, what does that mean? I said, well, you would restore the Second Amendment where I could order, a machine gun from Sears and have it delivered to my house. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, that's what the Second Amendment's about. It wasn't, the forefathers weren't worried that deer were going to suddenly stage a revolt. It's against the people being able to protect themselves from tyranny. And that's, and of course, we're kind of seeing that also play out in the recent trial. But, to be able to defend your life, your liberty, and your property. So it's sometimes people get really tied up on who sits in the governor's mansion. They really need to focus on the legislature because, we got constitutional carry passed in West Virginia, right to work in the Unborn Child Protection Act. That was all done with a Democratic governor where we just had to override the vetoes. If you have an enemy at the head of the state, it's easier to organize and mobilize. I said that out loud. So there you go. Yep. But I mean, facts are facts. I mean, the real nature of politics is what it is. And that's one thing that, too often people think they know how politics really works, but they don't. Government schools would never teach you, the information you would need to know to overthrow their power.
It's a secret science. And it's good it is. Frankly, if everybody in the world knew how politics really worked, we'd have that many more enemies out there.
True. That's true.
Although the left seems to actually do know these things. The problem they have right now is they can't control they can't control their impulses. They can't not go crazy on everything, whether it's critical racist theory or I mean, the list goes on forever. The Build Back Better plan that some certain Republicans just enabled. There's got to be some people saying, "Hey guys, this is terrible politics for us."
Well, I mean,
they can't help themselves. But apart from that, though, they do understand, and this is how the left has gotten to this point: is they're pushing that agenda, and actually even attacking Democrats that try to be moderate. Well, this is the lesson Republicans don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the left, they see each battle as just another engagement in a war that's going to take forever to win, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Republicans, unfortunately, and conservatives a lot, view each battle as an entity upon itself, and they don't look at the long term. So they try to be nice, they try to be kind, they try to compromise. The greatest danger to freedom and liberty are the compromisers, because they skate by election after election, slowly getting rid of your rights. Okay. My granddaddy always said, it's not the devil with horns I fear, because I know to avoid them, but it's the devil in the suit preaching scripture. Right. So these rhinos, these fake conservatives are a greater danger to freedom and liberty than, let's say, AOC is. Right. Because we all know she's crazy. Right. Or at least her handlers are. And too often you see people protecting bad politicians because of, the jersey they're wearing. Okay. Just because they're wearing that jersey doesn't mean anything at all. It doesn't mean a single thing. It's principle. It's how they vote. Right. And we have to, discipline begins at home. We have to clean up the Republican Party, much like the Socialists have, the Democratic. But if you think about the Socialists, have pretty much, staged a coup on the Democratic Party. And that's why they've been so successful. It's time that we start attacking in a confrontational, pushback manner, stop playing nice. I mean, our founders created a brilliant system of government by which you and I can strike a blow for freedom without starving to death at Valley Forge or getting shot by a British cannonball, right? We have, and the system works pretty much today, just like it did when the Constitution was ratified. So I encourage everybody, if you're not in the fight, get in the fight, because this is how you stop it. We have to all engage.
Yeah, we have a congressman in Michigan who not only voted for the second sham impeachment of Donald Trump, burning the Constitution, burning the First Amendment, he just voted for Joe Biden's Build Back Better plan, and he's got a primary challenger who's been endorsed by Donald Trump. And it makes you wonder, what do people think they have to lose opposing that guy who's been in Congress for like 20 plus years? It's a Republican seat.
Right.
I hope that we find the organization and mobilization to knock the guy out in the primary, knowing, though, he is one of the most entrenched Republicans. He's been there an extremely long time and all the rest of that. But the problem I have is we've got Republicans who are going to say, don't attack Fred Upton because, you're hurting the Republican Party and you're hurting the cause and blah, blah, blah. And the reality is, I look at it as, if Upton wins the nomination, enough voters might stay home on election day that you get a Democrat in the seat. So don't tell me that running a primary challenger against one of these yahoos is good for the party. I don't think it is. I think the more we have people like Fred Upton and Peter Meyer, and I'm sure you have your own O'Brien in the chat says, you're talking about Fred Upton. Yes, we are, Brian. We're talking about Fred Upton. I don't think the Republicans really are as loyal to their brand as they claim they are. Because that's another thing I noticed. Because what you were just talking about is this notion of party loyalty, which we've been told from the Republican establishment for years and for decades is so critical. But when Donald Trump became the nominee, suddenly all those rules went out the window. Suddenly it's perfectly normal for a governor not to endorse the nominee for president for the Republican Party. Suddenly it's normal for the Speaker of the House not to endorse the Republican nominee for president. So they're not playing by their own rules, but yet they expect us to. And it's so hypocritical.
This whole thing about the 11th commandment that Ronald Reagan put out, he did that after he was elected, after he beat up Gerald Ford so bad in 76, right?
Yeah.
And of course, you're also talking to a guy who called tens of thousands of gun owners in October of 2019 to tell them what their scumbag Republican voted for, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually in a general election beating up on bad Republicans. I don't care, right? I really don't care. And I will tell you that by doing so, the Republican Party realized we were going to go after whomever. We didn't care what party, letter they hid behind, and they straightened up their voting practices a good bit the next couple sessions. Now, it's people were like, "Oh my goodness, you took out a Republican in a general election." Yes, we did. He had it coming, as Granddaddy would say, right?
Yeah.
But then we'll swing back and we'll take back the state house with real conservatives. So and we'll get policy passed, not the policy that Republican was pushing, which was red flag gun confiscation, which is one of my, if you want to talk about a trigger issue, you talk about red flag gun confiscation, and I tend to go off for hours. So I don't think you want me to do that.
Yeah,
but,
I believe it. I've been working a lot on this case for this gentleman in Michigan. I think he's now 21 years old. He's been under house arrest for like 2 full years now for the crime of joking that his rifle would make snowflakes melt. His lawfully owned AR-15, and even just getting that policy through has been, let's just say, aggravating. But yeah, he spent 83 days in jail. He's appealed to the State Court of Appeals. The State Court of Appeals actually ruled that right now in Michigan, the law is if someone thinks they're threatened, that's a question for a jury to figure out.
Wow.
And we've been working on a bill to correct what the elements of a terrorist threat are, because apparently judges are too stupid to understand, and that's where we're at now.
Wow, that's incredible. It's this type of tyranny was the exact thing that our forefathers, fought against in 75 through 83. I'm talking about 1775 through 1783. I mean, if you really look at it and you study history, I'm a big history nerd. That's what I do. I study history. The colonists had more freedom and less taxes under King George III than we have today under this current regime. So back our freedom, and it's time we take back our liberty. They didn't fight and die on the battlefield of Saratoga or Mammoth Courthouse so that we could be taxed nearly half of what we make, or that we could be, that we could have our rights and our guns taken away at the whim of a bureaucrat. So we've got to do something about this. Yeah.
Hey, someone in the chat asked a question pertaining to the legislative approach in Virginia. Were Republicans who won generally against the infringement of injection mandates? So I assume he's talking about vaccines. Was that an issue that was big in Virginia?
That issue is not as big as guns and education. Those were the two ones this election. I'm being honest. Now, to me personally, absolutely, I believe in medical freedom. We had one candidate, which unfortunately lost, who was running to actually put in a medical freedom bill that we were going to work to push through, that would have stopped all government mandates, would have stopped the force of the vaccination, if you can call it that, within the state. I know I just worked with some West Virginia legislators to get a bill passed. It's not as strong as I wanted it to be, and unfortunately, we didn't have, the team in place in West Virginia. But they said that everybody must give health and religious exemptions, right? They must do it. There's no ifs, ands, and buts. So that's pretty strong. It's the strongest in the nation so far. But unfortunately, in Virginia, our candidate that was really running hard on that was against that. But we do have another young lady who did win, and she's making it one of her big issues. So,
good. What's your sense overall about voters feel about that? Because I personally haven't done polls on it. Do you know, is this a winning issue for us?
It's according where you're at in Virginia. If you're sitting in Northern Virginia, no, they're all government employees. They all drive around the Beltway and down to the Pentagon and government contractors. Norfolk the same way, Richmond the same way. If you go out in the Shenandoah Valley, or you go down and mid-state, it's a big issue. Okay. And it's going to be interesting how this plays out. I mean, I've been watching the court cases move through, where they were actually, I think it was the Fifth Circuit Court had banned 100 plus, companies that had 100 plus employees.
Right.
It's going to be a huge issue. I think it's a big issue. I know personally for me, it's a tremendous issue. Every time I have to go through TSA, which is one of my most favorite government, agencies, and where
I've literally not flown since COVID.
For a while there, they were letting me get away with a belly dancer mask. I used to wear one of those with the veil with the coins and everything.
Yeah.
And then they got a little excited about that, and so you just do the plan where you take enough peanuts and pistachios and stuff like that, and you just eat the whole way, right? But sometimes when you're doing instructing and you've got to fly to St. Louis, Missouri to teach, you got to fly to St. Louis, Missouri to teach. I'd prefer to drive, but
in the Rescue Michigan store, we've got a mask for when you have to wear one that says "Shame on America" across it.
COVID 1984 maybe, but it really is. And what's funny is we just passed November 5th, and you have to watch the V for Vendetta movie every November 5th, right? And if anybody's ever watched V for Vendetta, it's all about the government making up this illness that creates this totalitarian government that everything's about security, but security is no replacement for liberty, right? Liberty is your own security. So vaccines, that whole mask mandate, shutting down of businesses, shutting down churches even, right?
Yeah. This is one of our biggest issues too, by the way. I mean, to me, this is the most shocking deprivation of civil liberties we've seen in ever, really.
Yeah.
I mean, just in terms of magnitude, I mean, okay, probably the Japanese internment camps in World War II were worse, but for a tiny sliver of the population compared to this applying to everybody.
Well, what the problem is the churches let them get away with it. The reason we had a successful American Revolution is because preachers were preaching liberty and your God-given rights from the pulpit, right? When this all went down, churches ducked cover to try to, because they were afraid of their tax exempt status being taken away, and they didn't fight back, right? They were like, okay, we'll go on cable. Okay, we'll go live. We'll do this. We'll have outside, services, and everybody's, no, it's time that we make a stand. And a lot of people look to our religious leaders to do so. And unfortunately, I don't see the backbone right now, within the religious leaders.
There's not many of them. There's one guy from Canada.
Oh yes, I saw. He got arrested. But it's incredible. It's scary, and we need an awakening. We need a revolution of ideas from the people, not of a political party, not of a particular politician. Even though I think we were both members of the Ron Paul revolution, if we can remember now, it's funny. I run into liberty lovers who kind of sort of know who Ron Paul is, but not really. That stuns me a little bit. But but we need to have that type of revolution, a revolution of ideas, where you start talking about freedom, liberty, what the founding fathers really wanted this country to be, which is, of course, a republic, not a democracy, because democracy is a mob rule. But we need to start talking about freedom and liberty again, and we need to get. One thing we're trying to do at the state levels, build a bench of state legislators to get things done, get policy passed, but then to prepare them for the next step up, right? And some of them will probably make it up in the Congress. We need, in my opinion, 434 more Thomas Masseys. That's my 2 cents. Okay,
it's tough to find the right person who can do all this stuff. I had the privilege of working for years in the legislature for a guy who was just like Thomas Massey. I mean, absolutely courageous, absolutely outstanding on all the issues. But then, he could have run for state senate, and he said, "I don't want to." Why not? Because I don't enjoy my job. I miss my grandkids. I never quit my day job, and that's a fair position. I totally respect it, but it's too bad because he could have been a great state senator. Could have even gone higher, maybe. But it shows you how rare it is to find someone that's got the principles, the ability to run for office and be successful, and then have the determination to keep on going. Guys like that really are rare. Hey, real quick, we got a question in the chat asking about nullification.
Yes.
He was talking about, he says, I remember from like 10 years ago or a few years ago, it was a big thing. Is that still a big issue with you guys? You still talking about nullifying unconstitutional federal laws? I don't know that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm the one that wrote the bill when I was working for Campaign for Liberty in West Virginia, that we were going to outlaw Obamacare and arrest federal agents who try to enforce it, because nullification does not mean that you just say we're not helping the federal government,
Right.
enforce these dictates. Nullification means it's the state's responsibility to interpose themselves between federal tyranny and the people. So the bill has to have teeth. You have to, with the nullification process, make sure your bills say, and by the way, we will arrest and detain any federal agents, contractors, employees who attempt to enforce this within the state of, let's say, Michigan, right? I'm a big nullifier. As Jefferson said, nullification is a rightful remedy. If you read the 1798 Virginia and Kentucky resolutions, I'm all about nullification because we are a republic, okay? We are not a democracy. Yeah. And the 10th Amendment matters, right?
Do you see there being potential for legislation that makes it a crime for anyone to enforce, say, a federal mask mandate, perhaps, or a vaccine mandate, or one of those things?
Coming out of Virginia? Maybe. Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe in Virginia, but I'm going to put money there'd probably be a good chance there'll be something like that coming out of West Virginia, right? Yeah. They tend to lead the way sometimes over there. I absolutely believe that is the right thing to do. I believe also we should nullify Biden's mandate on federal employees. There should be, let's say, like for sake of conversation.
Looking like the courts might do that very soon anyway. But yes.
But, the courts, it's great, but when it really comes down to it, it's time state legislators do their job. Okay?
Yeah, I agree, and courts typically are the last to act anyway.
Right, but they should be the first to act because they've been elected to represent the people. They have a constitutional duty, right? They have the duty to interpose themselves between any tyranny and the people they represent. Whether it's the county sheriff, which is something we haven't talked about yet, but most importantly, your state legislator better start talking about nullifying these mandates, nullifying unconstitutional things. I think Utah was going to nullify the NSA at one point, which made me really happy. They're the only government agency that actually listens.
Yeah. So I just got it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a slow one. Sorry.
No, I'm the slow one.
Yeah, but but the thing is, it's these state delegates, state senators run and I'm going to bring jobs. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. They're not Santa Claus. Okay. It's not their job to bring money from other places. It's their job to defend the freedom and the liberty of the people they're elected to represent. And that means standing up to anyone and anybody who attempts to infringe upon their God-given rights. And until we, the people, start making politicians see this, they're not going to. We need to make it more painful for them not to stand up than for them to stand up.
Now, one thing you mentioned, and I should probably draw some more attention to, because you mentioned that you guys are working right now on legislation for next year. You guys have a part-time legislature in Virginia, don't you?
Yes, we do. We have a part-time legislature. We have well, put it this way, it's supposed to be part-time, but over the past couple of years, the governor kept calling them into special session and would drag on forever and forever, which if you're ever running an organization and you're doing budgeting and you're trying to figure out how much money you have to spend to fight XYZ issue, right? And then they call a special session and continue it there. And you're, calling up your donor saying, please, please, dear God, they've extended the fight on us. So, so I think it was like 4 or 5 months, but yeah, we've got 3 months.
But the nice thing is you guys get to plan that, like your lawmakers, your champions, you're like, yeah, this is what they're going to do. They're going to work on this. They're going to work on this. In Michigan, it's just like an ongoing slog of it's all ebb and flow. Legislation can come in anytime. It can sit in committee forever and then come back to life again. There's some bills we've been fighting that they passed committee, but now they died on the floor, but maybe they'll come back in lame duck. The pressure never ends.
Well,
So I hope you guys I'll never allow your legislature to go full time, because what a mess it really is.
Yeah, but you know what's funny is I love legislative fights. Campaigns are okay when you really have to take somebody out, right, to prove a point. But you're only doing that for the legislative session next time around to say, hey, you stand above their dead political corpse and say, we did this because they did that. Now, don't you do the same thing? And politicians, being herd animals, tend to listen. But when it comes down to, I love legislative fights. I don't sleep. When a good legislative fight's going on is when if you're picking the right fights and you're in good fights, that's when you're growing. That's when you're expanding. That's when you're learning. Right. That's when you're building. So, I think if it happened year round, I'd probably die of a heart attack by year 3. But, the amount of, Diet Mountain Dew I would consume might make me explode. I'm not sure. But, But at the same time, it's legislative fights are good things. And yet full-time legislatures are scary, scary, scary things, right? But to me, again, it's the policies that matter. It's how the politicians, once they're elected, vote that matters, not so much who's elected. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
I know what you mean. For the benefit of our audience, I mean, I think the important thing, what he's saying here, is we don't want to make it all about the next election where we support so-and-so, because you never know what so-and-so is going to actually do when they get elected. The politicians are the replaceable parts that you need to modify and tinker with as needed to get your agenda through. And when there's politicians on either side that are stopping you, you got to hold them accountable. Because if you don't, they're never going to learn and they're never going to respect you. And you have to beat up on Republicans if they're the ones that are standing in your way. There's no other way.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is, what people, they fall for the biggest lie in politics, and that is that the, good people are required to support the lesser of two evils, which we all know is a big lie. It's an absolute lie. You can't support evil. But again, it's the policy that matters. If Republican A had went out and voted, and killed like one did, we were within one vote of getting constitutional carry passed in Virginia. Emmett Hanger, a Republican senator in the 24th district, was the deciding vote to kill it. Right. Well, guess what? He had a primary. We were actually in front of his church on Sunday morning as he was walking in with his family, handing out pamphlets condemning him for his voting actions. He skated by on that one because he teamed up with the Democrats, literally teamed with the Democrats to win the primary. They were busing them in. But now we know what game he's going to play. We're coming back for him again.
Do you guys have partisan voter registration in Virginia?
Do what?
Do you guys have partisan voter registration in Virginia?
No, we don't. See, that's the problem.
That's a problem for us too. Yeah. I mean, there's going to come a time, and it hasn't come just yet because we're a little bit away from candidate filing, and we're going to be telling our people, by the way, we need warm bodies to be Democrats in every single one of these seats, because you got to keep them voting in their own primary.
Yep. I
mean, we've had just as you were describing a few years ago, we had like 5 Republicans running for state rep in this district, and one of them was a Tea Party favorite. This was a while back, so the Tea Party was a thing. And the Democrats backed the one Republican who did not fill out a survey indicating their support for right to work. And lo and behold, that one Republican got the votes to win the nomination and ended up spending 6 years in the legislature accomplishing absolutely nothing for the conservative cause.
Or actually hurting the conservative cause, as it may be.
Right. And, and now we got a guy running for Congress primarying Fred Upton. I'm like, someone's going to have to keep the Democrats voting in their own primary. And this guy's got to keep his hands clean, so he's not going to do anything about that. But I might do something to make sure we get somebody running as a Democrat, because we've got an incumbent Democrat governor, an incumbent Democrat secretary of state, an incumbent Democrat attorney general. And when there's nobody running in a contested Democrat primary, guess what? They cross over and vote in ours.
Oh, yeah, they absolutely do. And, that's something that's been an issue. But we've still managed to win because, only so many, Democrats tend to be purists like Republican, your Democrat voters, always pull the lever for Team D, and the Republicans tend to pull for Team R.
Yeah.
So there will be a percentage that will break and just for fun go over in the primary and vote with the other party to get their lesser evil, to get the nomination.
Well, what I find is what makes the difference is whether or not there's any Democrat contests.
Right.
If there's a Democrat contest, yeah, they'll stay in their own primary.
Right.
But if there's no Democrat contest, then they naturally, easily go over and vote on column B.
I wouldn't say easily, but I've seen it done. I've seen actually in states where they've had voter registration, people switch from D to independent at the behest of a really bad Republican incumbent to protect them on the primary fight. And unfortunately, we lost that primary by 33 votes because 700 Democrats switched to independent in that district and went and voted in the Republican primary. So who the majority of Republicans voted for, right? They voted for our guy. But unfortunately, that was a tactic that they pull, even in states with party registration. So we have to be prepared for that. But again, it's a matter of if you build a big enough list, if you build a big enough army, if you build a big enough team and you train them and you're effective, you can still overcome that. You can still do it. You just got to have a big enough, mean enough machine to make it happen.
Yep. Well, speaking of machinery, Rescue Michigan is one of many grassroots groups out there in Michigan. Some of them older, some of them newer. There's a lot of brand new organizations this year. I'm sure you guys have seen this in Virginia too. Mm-hmm. Not all of them the most experienced, right? But there's so much grassroots energy out there to be tapped into that there's organizations coming in to fill the void, and not all of them are the sharpest, to be frank. And I'm not going to name any names, but why don't you tell me some things about what you guys have seen from the grassroots? What are their priorities right now? What kind of things are they tapping into? Hopefully you guys haven't, I would just say this. Michigan needs a forensic audit. However, we don't have a process that really allows for an easy path to get one. And I'm getting flayed alive here for saying, hey, by the way, guys, I don't think this is a good fight. I don't see how it's going to, I don't know if it's going to grow our organization, but more importantly, I don't see how we're going to get to it when we got a Democrat governor. We've got too many rhinos in the legislature, and we have a very weird thing in our state. We have a process where if you collect 500,000 signatures, the legislature can pass a bill that's not subject to the governor's veto.
Really?
So So you might imagine there's a lot of groups out there collecting signatures right now. Some of them are well-funded, well-organized, running smart campaigns, and I've talked about a few of them. There's one for election integrity called Secure My Vote. There's another one for ending the lockdowns called Unlock Michigan. And these are, well-executed, funded campaigns that have already gotten assurances from leadership that they're going to go through if they get the signatures. There's another effort, and it's still kind of nascent, talking about we're going to force a forensic audit by getting 500,000 signatures, getting the legislature to vote for something that we already have enough Republicans saying I'm not going to support it, that they're not going to. And if the legislature doesn't pass it, then it kicks up to the ballot in 2022, at which point all the evidence will be destroyed. And I'm like, he's going here, hey guys, I don't see how this is going to work. And by the way, in the meantime, what are they doing collecting signatures? Not pressuring politicians.
Exactly. Well, a politician probably told them to go out and collect signatures but whenever a politician tells you to do something, you always have to ask yourself, what's in it for them if I listen to them and behave as they want? What I found a lot of times, if you get out in front of everybody and you're kind of the tip of the spear, you go charging in first, which is why literally 2 days after the election, we come charging out and over 300,000 Virginians get the email saying, we are going for red flag repeal. Right. We're going to try to get ahead of things, control the conversation. Like you talked about, we did with the election, with the school board thing. We get out there, we're loud. We push it, out to about 1 million people on social media a month. Right. We push that out. We push on email. And then of course, we just turn on our, audit. One weekend alone, I sent out 800,000 phone calls. We can raise quite a ruckus here. Right. And I enjoy raising ruckus, and you can steal the momentum. You can steal and make it your fight, right? Make everybody talk about your fight compared to everything else. I mean, there are groups who are well-meaning but do dumb things. I understand that, but we just move faster and get out in front and hit harder. I mean, that's you can't stop people from doing dumb things. You can just steal the oxygen out of the room.
Yeah. Well, we do a lot of yammering, that's for sure. And and not just yammering. I mean, we've had a few fights where literally an email blast has killed a bill. Just boom.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've tested. We have what's called the Minutemen program, which is people who donate monthly to us to help us continue the fight. They also have agreed in a minute's notice, if we send out an email, that they will contact that legislator, right, with the message that we've put out. They also
That's a great idea.
And they're amazing. I've tested a few times. I've sent out an email to like 1,000 of the Minutemen, and I have had someone sit outside the legislator's door to listen to the phone blow up, right? And right after I hit send, about 5 minutes later, the phones are swamped, right?
Yeah. People don't realize how few calls lawmakers at the state level really get. I mean, I worked in a legislature for several years, and it'd be rare for the phone to ring more than like 10 times in a whole day with constituent calls.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there were times because when we run automated calls, we have the ability for the person who gets the call to press 1 and automatically be connected to the office, right? We can track that. We've had like 1,000 calls in like 4 hours going to one state senator. I mean, we've blown them up to the point that they were actually disconnecting their phones. So then we went back and found what they had put on their filing paperwork, which is public record, their cell phone number. So then we directed all the calls to their cell phone or their home phone or whatever was public record. And we just pretty much hunted them everywhere to the point that we had one state senator, Craig Deeds, who just every phone I think he ever had, he made the mistake of putting public, and we were just raining, phone calls on him, which is how we stopped the homemade or so-called ghost gun ban. Right? He was the deciding vote with 15 minutes left in the legislative session. It's 11:45 at night, and I'm still watching what I call Criminal Minds or the state legislature in session.
Now, do you guys only direct your supporters to target people that are their own state reps and senators, or you just say, no, screw it, hit whoever needs to be hit?
Well, it's according to what's actually going on. Most of the time I direct things in district, but let's say you've got one vote, you've identified one vote you need right now, right? You just overwhelm, right? Yep. So, but
a committee chair, perhaps
99% of the time I hit their home voters, right? And and like I said, that's what we did in all the targeted districts is we beat on them for 2 years. So you had an agitated and aggravated voter base that was ready to throw them out with the trash as soon as they got the first chance to in an election. So
Rehab Mom, I just noticed, has a rant for us on Rumble, which I've been looking at the YouTube comments, but says Fred Upton must be primaried, Meyer as well. Amen. They have primaries. Fred Upton has a great primary challenger in Steve Carra, who's been endorsed by Donald Trump. Meyer has a challenger, Tom Norton. I don't know how viable he is. I would think Meyer would be weaker. But either way, yes. I mean, if burning the Constitution and attacking the president for having the gall to encourage people to peacefully assemble at the Capitol and then lie about it in the media for months and months, if that's not enough to merit a primary challenger, what is? And by the way, if those primary challengers don't succeed, this is going back to what you were talking about earlier about the lesser of two evils. I'd rather we have a Democrat in those seats because they might be taken out in 2 years.
Right.
You might get an actual conservative. And
I would never tell anybody to vote for a socialist. However, I will expose what the Republican did and let them decide. You put out how they vote and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we're not going to endorse a Democrat. Obviously, you can't do that. But you have to
endorse anybody. So,
but you have to help people understand what happens if you constantly go for this, because this is something that they do every single election. Is you got to vote Republican. Your guy didn't make it in the primary. Well, too bad. Now you got to vote for the establishment pick. And it's like, well, first of all, as I mentioned earlier, those rules never applied when our guys win. You have no problem with not endorsing Trump. You have no problem skipping out on the unity dinner when our guy beats you in the primary. That never happens. And as you mentioned, number one, you can't support evil, which I think is a really weak argument, unfortunately, because that doesn't address the calculation people make, right? Like they're thinking, well, yeah, but I want to minimize evil. These are my two choices. But the more important arguments are, number one, you're never going to get your way if you condone and vote for and support people that are going against you on the issues.
No, they'll never pay attention to you in the legislative session if you'll turn around and support them come election time, right?
Yeah.
You've got to show them that there is a price to be paid for bad legislative behavior, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not shy about that. I remember we had the 2019 Republican convention, not convention, but it was like a retreat or something. They call it the advance. And this woman stood up front and she said, I want all Republicans to stand up and hold hands and pledge unity. I looked around, there's about 500 people in the room, and I was the single person sitting in a chair refusing to do so. And everybody's staring at me and I'm smiling back at them because I care about issues more than I care about a dumb party, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you can actually litigate any issue within the party. Several years ago, Ron Paul was the black sheep for being opposed to military adventurism. And then Donald Trump became president. And suddenly the guy who excoriated George W. Bush over 9/11 at the debate is our nominee.
Right.
And then there was another huge issue in 2016 with immigration. And all of a sudden we're making the fight within the party over immigration policy, which I don't know. I don't know where that's left off now. Unfortunately, the problem with that is that Trump abandoned his promises on immigration. But hey, and then I just committed heresy there, criticizing Trump for something. But hey, look, he broke his promises on that. And this is funny because this is where our own side has its own problem. Mm-hmm. That when our guy breaks his promise, do you hold him accountable?
Right.
Well, I remember there's a very small number of people that did. It was like Ann Coulter, Michelle Malkin, and not very many others. And they all became pariahs in the conservative, quote unquote, conservative movement because they called him out for not doing that. It's like, well, if you don't call him out for doing it, he's going to keep doing the wrong thing. And pretty soon he's appointing lousy people to his cabinet. Pretty soon he's, I mean, how many more promises did he break? Because he realized my base is mine. They're mine. No matter what I do, they're supporting me. So I'm going to triangulate and work more with the establishment. And maybe I'll bring more of those people onto our team. And what happened at the end? He got beaten the general anyway. And arguably, maybe there was some election fraud. But either way, it shouldn't have even been close.
Right.
Shouldn't have even been close.
Well, I mean, the thing is, unfortunately, I remember when Donald Trump was sitting beside Dianne Feinstein and said, yeah, take the guns first, then see them in court. I mean, when he supported a red flag, what happened with that then is when the Democrats were fighting for a red flag gun confiscation in Virginia, you had Democrats standing up and quoting President Trump saying this ought to be a bipartisan issue. But if you notice, Trump went real quiet on that real fast. I think because there were a couple groups that I know real well that beat on him hard about that, and he changed his tune. I mean, we got to keep our people in line. And personality politics is just like identity politics. It always leads to conflict, strife, and essentially loss. You can't get stuck on personality. You can't get stuck on party. You have to stick to principles. I mean, the Continental Soldier did not starve at Valley Forge or die at Guilford Courthouse so that some politician could get elected. No, they fought for freedom. They fought for liberty. They fought for the right to keep and bear arms, the right to be left alone, the right to be secure in your persons, your papers, and your possessions, the right to due process. Okay.
Yeah.
We've got to look back and see these great, heroes that created this country and realize that it's our job to restore that liberty and give it to future generations. I think there's one thing that, that Dr. Paul said one time, and that is, may future generations look back on our work and say that these were ordinary men and women who in a time of great crisis stood up to the politicians, the media, and the talking heads and saved the republic, right? That's what we need to do. We don't need to rally behind a certain personality. No, we need to stand for principle. And if we stand for principle, that will force these personality politicians to adopt our principles if they want to go anywhere.
Right. And that's exactly right. And, you know, we've been going for just about 80 minutes now, and I don't want to take up your night. I know you have been insanely busy, but I also want to make sure you've got an opportunity to plug all the great work that Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership is doing. I actually recently asked Debbie Hopper, who like schedules your schools, to make sure to always let me know when you guys have schools coming up in Michigan. And I think she told me the other day you don't have any more for the rest of this year, but I know you guys have done like 20 or 30 in Michigan. So if you have any schools coming up, please let us know. I'm going to put up a couple of other websites on the screen too, because I want to make sure I give you guys all the plugs. You mentioned there was another group you've been involved with, the Restore. Wait, this is someone we looked at before. There's another one, wasn't there?
This is our other website that we worked on for the elections, called Restore Virginia Now, to bring back to its original state and renew, right? But the foundation, to get trained, is just like I tell people. George Washington and the Continental Army was never successful until Baron von Steuben showed up at Valley Forge and trained them how to fight. If you're going to spend your time, your talent, and your treasure in politics, do it to win, okay? And the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership, we were holding 1 or 2 classes a weekend when Donald Trump was president. Now that we have the current occupant in the White House, we're holding 5 or 6 classes a weekend. I know we have classes coming up in Virginia on January 15th down in Suffolk, and one on the eastern part of Maryland on January 22nd. Why? Because I'm teaching both of them. Those are the ones I know about. But it's very important. That's Mike Rothfeld. For those people who don't know him, he was the founder of the foundation. And it's true what Sam Adams says in that quote. There's so much to learn. The biggest thing is you learn the real nature of politics and politicians. Once you understand how they really operate, not how government schools or, you know, maybe your poli-sci professor told you, but when you actually realize what, you know, how politics really works, it reduces everything to the mechanical. Okay. And it's understandable. You understand what's going to happen, and you can pick the best fights. You can win on fights. I mean, just the fact that with the Democratic, you know, House, Senate, and executive, and they were all gun grabbing nuts, we were able to stop an AR ban, a magazine capacity ban, and, you know, homemade gun ban back-to-back years, just using these tactics. I encourage everybody, again, if you're going to spend any time, whether it's just a hobby in politics or something you're doing professionally, get to these classes so you can look. I think there's upcoming school button you can check and you see where upcoming classes are. I'm not sure how that works because I only have my login, but I encourage everybody to get to one of these. You know,
I don't see the upcoming schools link here, and I think I've heard that Mike there actually is hesitant to post the school links. I will say, however, as long as we know about them, we'll promote them. We want to get people out there. This is the school I came from back in 2008. I took my first faculty training, and and everything you guys teach has been borne out by experience, and not just even in Michigan, but I've seen the same, and as you're just describing, it's the same thing in every state. It's they're universal principles. It works the same everywhere else. It really is an essential nature of politicians and how they think, how they operate, how they react to pressure, and how you as a grassroots leader can respond to that and effectively pass your legislation if you understand what they really react to. And
right. If you understand and take the class, it turns you from political prey to political predator. I used to get really mad and throw, you know, pillows off my couch at the television and get steaming mad and not know what to do. Now I know what to do. So instead of getting mad, I get even. And that's ought to be the goal of everybody, because if you're waiting for a politician to save you, you've already lost. Okay. It's up to each of us. It's our duty to defend our God-given rights to freedom. Okay. Not wait for some politician to do something. We have to do something now because, you know, like Ronald Reagan said, you know, freedom is one generation away from extinction. It's up to us to preserve it so our children and grandchildren grow up free.
Right. And by the way, as I understand, because by the way, I should tell you a little bit about Rescue Michigan, because I know you're not familiar with us.
Right.
Other than the fact that, as I've said, we apply these same principles, but we're all about grassroots leadership, and we encourage all of our members to start their own local organization, not at the state level, not at the county level, at the precinct level, the township level. And if you guys are doing that and using the tools on our website to grow your organization, the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership will schedule a school in your neighborhood, as long as you can commit to them that you're going to bring at least 20 people there. And they're not expensive schools. So if you want to do this, please, by all means, call them up, organize a school. Maybe Chris will come lecture you for 8 hours.
I tell you, the first time I
maybe
talked,
Dan, who was on our show a few months ago.
Yeah, first time I taught, I got real respect for Rand Paul and his filibuster, because when you're on your feet for 9 hours teaching, it'll wear you down a little bit. But it's so much information. I've been blessed to be able to instruct in many states now throughout the Republic. I want to instruct in many, many more because I really feel that it's my job to inspire and to train those who will be better than me to get out and fight for freedom, so that one day, our children and their children can live free on this continent,
Absolutely. Well, hey, brother, it has been great having you on the show tonight. It's great to hear all the wonderful things you guys have done in Virginia, flipping the state house, making it not just more Republican, but more liberty oriented is no small task. And especially in Virginia, where you got a big cancer right next to you growing into your body there in Washington.
Oh, you mean Mordor? Yeah, we've got Mordor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we've got Detroit, but it's not that bad.
No.
I mean, it's bad, but it's not.
Mordor. I try to never go there. It's a bad place.
Yeah. I grew up in the Beltway area myself. I know how bad it is. That's why I stayed in Michigan after I moved out here. But Michigan's in play. I mean, we've got a whole lot riding on 2022, 2024. And our goal is to maximize the effectiveness of the grassroots here. And so it's been a privilege and an honor to have you on our show. And as always, man, as I usually always close by saying to our audience, thanks again for all that you guys do for liberty. Chris, stay on just a moment. We're going to go off the air, but I want to just say our proper goodbyes before you go. But for everyone, once again, thanks for all you guys do for liberty. Till next time. Peace.
Thank you.